Good morning or afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeremy Walsh, and I'm the Director of Support, Training, and Documentation for BNI Connect. I would like to welcome everybody to the webinar today. Today's webinar is on the chapter goals for leadership teams. BNI Connect has a great system where you can track your chapter's goals and progress over the course of your leadership team term. So right from the start of your term, whether that's in October, whether it's in April, you can input your goals into BNI Connect and then follow along with them throughout the year in order to find out how you're doing. You can also schedule out things like educational moments and what you'd like to do in order to achieve those goals, all through BNI Connect. Couple of housekeeping things before we get started today. First off, I would like to apologize for my voice. I do seem to have a bit of laryngitis. I've had it for about a week. Hopefully it will get better soon. But I do appreciate you bearing with me through this webinar. It is a live webinar. That also means that if you have any questions as we're going through the material today, please do feel free to ask those questions. The easiest thing to do is to type the questions in to the questions panel. I'll see them pop up on my screen, and I'll be able to answer those right away as we're going through. This webinar is being recorded. It will be made available very shortly after we're done with the webinar today, and you'll be able to find that on a couple of different places, first of which is on the support site. So you can click on the question mark here in the upper right-hand corner. That will take you over to support.bniconnect.com. You'll see our list of upcoming webinars. February will be posted very shortly. And then if you scroll down, you'll see chapter training and documentation. And this webinar will be part of the January 2015 series. Or if you'd like to follow along with one with a slightly better voice, you can go back to one of the previous months as well. You'll also be able to check out any of the other help documentation. For example, if you'd like to go back and review how to enter chapter goals, you can click on the help document and be reminded of how to do it. You can also find all of our recorded material up on our YouTube channel. If you go to youtube.com/BNI Connect Global, this has a ton of material. Bunch of short 3 to 5 minute educational moments, some announcements from Dr. Meisner, and of course all of our recorded webinars and other content. But let's take a look at the chapter goals. All right, so the first thing you need to do obviously is to log in to BNI Connect. Once you've done that, what we need to do is we need to get into a little bit deeper. So obviously this front page is your personal weekly activity, what you're going to be doing to enter your weekly slips and review your activity. But we need to go a little bit deeper into the system to find how to enter the goals. The place we're going to go to do this is the operations menu. So up at the top we have network, operations, and reports. Network is all the social media stuff where you go for your connections and testimonials, things like that. Operations is where we go to do input. So if we're going to be inputting PALMS reports or inputting visitors, or as we're going to do now, we're going to be inputting our chapter goals, we're going to go to operations. Reports, on the other hand, is all the output. So in order to input stuff, we're going to go to operations and then the chapter level. Once we get here, on the left-hand side, we should see the option for Manage Goals. Now, in order to enter chapter goals, you do need to be on the leadership team, usually, the president, vice president, secretary, treasurer. The rest of your chapter should have the ability to view the chapter goals, but only you as a leadership team person will have the ability to enter the chapter goals. So the first thing we want to do is to click on Enter Chapter Goals. Now the first screen that pops up is going to be the start of entering the chapter goals. And the first thing we need to do is to come up with a long-term vision and a mission statement for the chapter. And this is more of an all-encompassing thing. You may have done something similar with your own personal business to come up with a long-term vision. Where do you picture yourself being as a business or as a chapter in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, even 10 years? Then the mission statement is, what code of ethics, what things about you, about your business or your chapter that are going to help you to get to that place. So here up in the Antarctica Shiver region, we have our Burr chapter, and we've decided that we are going to, for a long-term vision, we're going to grow the chapter to be the largest chapter in the entire continent. In addition, we wish to be the #1 chapter in closed business and referrals within a 200-mile radius. So that is our long-term vision that we're going to establish all of our goals around. That's what we're going to rally our troops around. Now, the mission statement is, how are we going to get there? And why are we doing this? So the mission statement for the Burr chapter is to help members increase their business through a structured, positive, and professional word-of-mouth program that enables them to develop long-term, meaningful relationships with quality business professionals and to create positive community goodwill. Once you've established those two factors, you need to choose when you're going to start your goals from. Now, you can choose any time frame you'd like to. You're able to work on your goals at a 6-month time period at a time, but they can be any 6-month time period. Traditionally, it's going to want you to set up your goals for the next upcoming 6-month BNI period, which in this case would be April 2015 through October. But I actually like to start them as of today. So I'm going to start entering my goals for January 2015. Once I click Go, the screen will change basically to a spreadsheet. This spreadsheet is what's going to allow us to put in our goals and our mechanisms. Now, a goal is the measurable, numerical number of what we're trying to achieve. The mechanisms are meant to be really ideas for how you'd like to achieve that goal. In the leadership team, one of the things that we often do as leadership teams is to basically treat BNI as a week-to-week series of events. With a little bit of planning, we can actually go through and look at this as a whole term. By establishing the goals and mechanisms, it helps us to organize our term in office. So instead of saying you're showing up, let's say that you meet on Thursdays, my chapter happens to meet on Thursdays. So instead of showing up on Thursday and say, hey, you know what, let's do an educational moment today on such and such. Well, that may not support the long-term vision of the chapter. I mean, it might still be a good idea to do that particular educational moment, but it might not have been planned out. Whereas if you know that, let's say in the month of March that you want to be having a visitor day and you're going to be doing the extravaganza and there's leadership team training and there's all these other things that are happening, to do an activity or to do a game or to do an educational moment that supports all of those goals is much more effective. So this can help you do that. So again, essentially we're broken into all the different chapter success drivers, which are attendance percentage, total number of one-to-ones, CEUs, visitors, new memberships, number of members in the chapter, number of referrals, and finally, thank you for closed business. And for each of these, we can set up our goal for the month. So in this case, the 6-month period is January through June. What the goal is, and mechanisms to support that goal. So let's take a look at how this would work. For example, we have this first one here, which is attendance percentage. And that's a pretty straightforward one. Sorry about that. Before we start, we also have an option up at the top. And that is, how are we going to be entering and tracking our goals? Do we want to use a per chapter goal, or do we want to use individual goals? Now, we can only make one choice, and that will affect all of our goals, especially when it comes to the number of one-to-ones and the CEUs and visitors and things like that. Most people choose for the whole chapter because we're working with basically whole numbers for our goals, as opposed to per member, which will fluctuate depending on how many people you have in the chapter. For our example, I'm going to keep this as a 4 whole chapter goals. So again, the first one is attendance percentage. So I can tell you right now, our Burr chapter, we're having a real attendance problem. We only get about 85% attendance, but we'd really like to get that up to as close to 100% as we can over the course of the next 6 months. So knowing that we want to get, let's say we want to get to 98% attendance, the easiest thing I've always found to do is to put the end goal first. So begin with the end in mind. Knowing in 6 months I want to get to 98%, I'm going to put that number there. And knowing that we're starting in January, we're already halfway through this month, and we're at about 85% right now. This makes it a lot easier to split the difference and work up to that 98% goal. So 85 minus 98 or 98 minus 85, that's about a 13% difference, which means that over the course of the 6 months, we have to increase our attendance by 2 to 3% per month. So beginning in February, let's say we're going to move up slowly here. So we're going to go to maybe 86 and then 88. And then maybe we're going to jump up a little bit to 91, 95, and 98. So we're able to stagger those goals upwards. Now, the mechanisms that we use are, again, this is helping you to organize your leadership team and your leadership team efforts. So maybe this month we're going to work as a leadership team as far as attendance goes to make sure that the vice president is, let's say, sending out the control letters when people miss a meeting. So they send out the control letter at 2 absences and 3 absences, and maybe having a sit down with the member that has more than 2 or 3 absences. So we're going to put in here as one of the mechanisms, VP sends out control letters for absence. And maybe as a follow-up to that next month, we're going to look at the absence report for recognition. Maybe we're going to recognize people that month for perfect attendance. And maybe we'll also do an educational moment in that month sometime about the importance of showing up and subs. And really, we can plan out different things to support those goals on a monthly basis. Now, if you're looking for ideas, you're not sure exactly what things might support attendance percentage, again, this is open to you, but there are some suggestions here in the chapter goal guide up here at the top. If you click the chapter goal guide, you'll see that here are some possible mechanisms for these chapter success drivers. So one might be to implement the mentoring program. Or you have a bring your substitute day. All different ideas, and you can always, if you want to, copy and paste them right into the mechanism. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that you don't have to do these in the order that they're displayed here. I might want to scroll down because some of these, because I'm doing for whole chapter goals, some of these total number of one-to-ones and CEUs, these might be dependent on how big I want the chapter to get. So I might want to go down here and start with total number of members in the chapter as the next thing that I look at, since this may drive a lot of the rest of my goals. Now, right now we are at, we're about 25 members up there in the Burr chapter. So I can put that in here for our current number of members in the chapter. Now in the next 6 months, I'd like to grow this chapter to be a 35-member chapter. So we'd like to increase our membership by 10. So that means that we're going to have to grow, again, that's 10 over 6 months, approximately 2 members per month. So let's see. Let's do 27, 29, 31, 33, and 35. So now we have a steady growth over the course of the next 6 months. And what are some mechanisms that we can do to bring ourselves to that next level? Well, I thought one of those, bring your sub day, would be a good thing to introduce more people to the chapter. So maybe I'd like to use that one here in February. We're going to do a bring your sub day. Now I also know that up in the April and May is BNI Extravaganza. That's when we have membership drives throughout the world in BNI. So I can just put in here that we have the Extravaganza. And I know that that's happening for 2 months. Now, something else that's going to happen during those 2 months is most chapters have a visitor day during those months. So I know that the visitors day is going to be probably sometime in late April. So I'm going to go ahead and put this goal in here as well. Now, other things that you can do is, let's say I'd like to run a BNI game. And I know that that usually takes about 2 months to go through. Now, while you're doing this, it's a good idea, just as with working on any Excel spreadsheet or any Word document or anything like that, to make sure that you hit the Save button every once in a while. It'll ask if you're sure. It will also allow you to go back and continue what you were doing and save those goals. All right, so let's take a look at some additional goals that we have in here. So for example, number of new memberships. Now this one's fairly straightforward as well, because I know that if I'm going to be growing by 2 per month, I'm going to need at least 2 new memberships a month to support that chapter growth. Now the thing with BNI is that we also have attrition. Although we all strive for 100% retention, there's always a reason that people leave that can't be controlled. It could be they got a new job or a new position, or maybe they were so successful that they need to take some time off to go hire some employees. Whatever the reason is, we tend to lose, on average, about 1 member per month from our chapters. So we do need to keep that in mind while we are looking at the number of new members that we'd like to bring into the group. So at a minimum, we do have to have at least 1 new member a month just to maintain what our current membership is. Now for this, we'd also want to add in the number in order to get to our goal number of members per month. So in this case, we're just going to be adding 2. So we're going to make this 3. So we need to actually induct 3 new members each month in order to achieve our goals. Now the great thing about the mechanisms is that there are also sometimes when the mechanisms may support multiple goals throughout the month. So for example, this visitor day also supports new memberships. And the BNI game also supports new memberships. So I'm just copying and pasting some of these into the mechanisms. And of course, we can always look at the chapter goal guide for some additional ideas, and we can scroll down to new memberships. So one is to hit the visitors per month goal, one is to run a proper visitor orientation. So maybe I'd like to add in visitor orientation training. and so on and so forth. I'm going to hit save just for good measure here. And again, we can look at all of the rest of the goals. Visitors also support new memberships. So this is another one where we know that approximately 10 to 20% of visitors end up submitting an application. Or you need to look at the conversion rate for your own chapter in order to decide what that number is. But here's where, by just having our number of members in chapter goal, we can now come up with our new membership goal and our visitor goal as well. So let's say we have a pretty high conversion rate for our visitors. Our visitor hosts are doing a phenomenal job with the orientation process. So we're converting, let's say, 30% of our members. One in every 3 visitors becomes a member. So if we know that, then we know that we need to have at least 9 visitors in each of these months in order to have 3 new memberships. So I'm going to go ahead and say 10 visitors per month in order to hit those 3 new memberships, which of course would need to be somewhere in the vicinity of 2 or so, 2 to 3 visitors per week. And what are things that can support that goal? Again, we have some of the common ones. The BNI game is a great thing. Also, a visitor day will help support that goal. We might want to have an educational moment on how to invite. Now, for a lot of these goals, CEUs, total number of one-to-ones, and number of referrals, in my mind, those 3 goals tend to be very similar. And again, we can base these on the number of members in the chapter as well. So, for example, I'm going to start down here with number of referrals, just because I like to jump around a lot, keep things interesting. We know that for our chapter, our goal for our members is that we want to be producing at least 1 referral per week per member. That is our goal for every member of our chapter, 1 referral per week. So based on that, that is 4 per month. Or if we have 25 members in our chapter, that would be 100 referrals per month. And it's the same thing with just doing this calculation all the way through. So in this case, we have 108, and then 116, is that 124, 132, and 140. And what are different mechanisms to increase the number of referrals? So one might be to take notes during weekly presentations. So it might be teaching people to use the meeting notes report. The BNI game, that always is a multifaceted event. And of course, we have the chapter goal guide to help us out. And if we scroll down to number of referrals, we can create a preferred provider list. We can make sure that we're acknowledging our members that bring the most referrals. So again, maybe we want to make sure in April that we're doing recognition. Now in our chapter, we also want to make sure everybody's doing one one-to-one per week and one CEU per week. So we can pretty much copy those goals up here, 100, 108, 116, 124, 132, and 140. And the same thing for our one-to-ones. And again, we can put in some mechanisms that might support those goals. And finally, we have thank you for closed business. Now, we know that we want to be a $1 million chapter. So our goal here is to we want to make sure that we're putting in $100,000 closed business a month, and that will help us surpass our goal. And what are some mechanisms that can support that? We can have them teach people how to report. And recognition will help with that as well. Now the great thing about this is that once we have our goals input and saved, we can then start to review the progress of those goals throughout the year. So as POMS reports for your chapter, so when your VP submits your weekly POMS report, it updates the actuals into your goals for that term. Excuse me. So if I go back to operations, and I go to View Goals, by default, the time period is going to be the current 6-month period, but again, you can change that to anything that you'd like to. What we can see is that, for example, for attendance, we had a goal of 86, 89, 92. We can see that our actual attendance in October was 89%. Our actual attendance for November was 74%. So our VP is really behind on submitting POMS reports in Antarctica, so our goals have not been actualized for December and January. But we can see the same thing for total number of one-to-ones, for CEUs, for visitors, for new memberships, etc., etc. Now, just so you have an idea, I'm going to show you a live chapter here in the system. I'm going to pick a random one in a region that I know is using this for every chapter in their region. And what we should be able to see here is some actual results and some actual mechanisms. And this is the chapter goals. And of course, once you get here, you can print this out. If you find that you'd rather work on this offline as well, you can always take this report here and export this to Excel, which might make it easier to work offline in order to input the various mechanisms. All right, we're pretty much at the bottom of the hour. What I'd like to do is to open this up for questions. I do see one question here from Dawn, which I will get to right now. While you're thinking of any questions, for anybody that does need to leave right away, just a reminder, this is being recorded, including the questions, and it will be made available very shortly up on YouTube and on the support site. So Dawn's question is, can the member put this in on their own, or does leadership submit this? So this is a leadership team whole chapter tool. It is not available at the member level for their own personal goals. So only a leadership team person can put the goals in here. Does that help, Don? Jason says, very informative, thank you. And no, thank you, Jason. Thank you for being here, and I'm glad that you found it helpful. By the way, if anybody else found today's information helpful or this format, the live webinar format, helpful, we do a full series of webinars on a monthly basis. A good referral from me would be to please let your other chapter members know about these webinars. We have one final webinar for the month coming up, and that's this Thursday, January 22nd at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. That's going to be on the leadership team, tools, and reports. Then we're going to be doing the whole series all over again in February. So please let your chapters know about that. I should have that February schedule posted very shortly. Dawn, as far as entering a CEU, you would enter your CEU. Just go back to the home screen, everybody, if you want to do this right now. Click on Home, go to Submit a CEU slip, and give yourself one CEU for a BNI webinar. Should be good to go. All right, do we have any other questions? Any other questions at all? I'd be happy to answer those questions. All right, thank you guys so much for being here today, and I would also love it if you gave us a like on Facebook. Check us out, facebook.com/BNI Connect Global, facebook.com, BNI Connect Global. We do webinar reminders and announcements and tips and tricks and all that kind of stuff up there as well. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and I look forward to speaking with you soon and hopefully with a better voice next time. Happy connecting, everyone.